بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. After praising Allah Ta'ala and sending salutations upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we begin this Hanafi BA program by firstly welcoming all of you on board to our year one semester. This particular module in semester one will be covering the jurisprudence of worship, the fiqh al-ibadat, and we will be going through this book, The Ascent to Felicity. I would recommend people to buy this book. If not, you can follow along inshallah through throughout the modules that we do. And we firstly would make dua to Allah Ta'ala that He makes this journey easy for us, He makes it fruitful, and He gives us this beneficial knowledge, and He allows us to, through it, obtain His pleasure. We make dua using the wordings that our pious predecessors would make dua through, would supplicate Him through. So I ask you to recite with me: Rabbi yassir wa la tu'assir wa tammim bil khair wa bika nasta'een. That we ask Allah Ta'ala, O our Lord, that make it easy. You are the one that makes things easy. Allah, make the journey easy for us, and give us the ability to be able to complete this journey. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. We also make dua, Rabbana zidna ilma, O Allah, increase our knowledge and grant us beneficial knowledge. Allahumma inna nas'aluka ilman nafi'ah. And then be giving us the ability to act upon this knowledge. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. So inshallah we'll be going through the introduction in the next few modules. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. The text that we've chosen to study for this particular semester is the Ascent to Felicity, Maraqi' al-Sa'adat. The full name of the kitab is Maraqi' al-Sa'adat fi ilmay al-Tawheed wal-Ibadat, the meaning of which is the ascent to felicity in the science or in the sciences of theology and jurisprudence of worship. So this text is written by the original text in Arabic, you would say, is written by Imam Hassan ibn Ammar al-Shurumbulali, famously known as Imam al-Shurumbulali, who was who is still a very recognized leading jurist of the Hanafi school. He is well known for so many texts that he has written, specifically Nur al-Idah. For those who have studied a bit of fiqh before, know that this is the kitab Nur al-Idah, famously known, taught in many Islamic seminaries, Islamic jurisprudence classes, fiqh classes, wherever they take place. Nur al-Idah is one of the kitabs that has been traditionally taught in many places. And then he himself, Imam al-Shurumbulali, wrote commentaries on his Nur al-Idah. So Nur al-Idah is a small text, is a primer, a matan text, and he then went and done commentary on it, which was the name of which the kitab he wrote was Imdadul Fattah. So he wrote this kitab and then he summarized Imdadul Fattah and wrote a summary version of the commentary, the detailed commentary he wrote. And this summary he named as Maraqi al-Falah. So Maraqi al-Falah is also another famous book that people use as a commentary side by side to go along with studying the Nur al-Idah whenever the text Nur al-Idah is studied. So this is a translation of the original Arabic text, Maraqi al-Sa'adat, the Ascent to Felicity. The translation is done by Mufti Faraz, published by White Thread. So this is the book that we have chosen to go through for these fiqh sessions. And Imam Shurumbuladi himself, just a little bit about him before we actually start the kitab itself, the book itself, or going through the fiqh in the book. So Imam Shurumbuladi, just to understand who he is, so that we become acquainted with the author, so that we can understand and hold a bit more weight and gravity to what he's going to be teaching us, inshallah, in the book. So he was born in Egypt in 994 Hijri. His father, at an early age, took him to Cairo, um, and at a tender age of 6 years old, and he memorized the Quran. He started memorizing the Quran, studying the basics of Islamic sciences, and he became really, really profound in studying all of this, to the extent that he then went on to study at Azhar University, which was at that time the sanctuary for advanced students. Anyone that wanted to study advanced studies in Islamic education and Islamic studies, they would go to Azhar University. So he went there, studied under the great shuyukh that were teaching there, the teachers that were there, and he became really, really well known in amongst his peers and amongst his teachers and everybody, to such an extent that after finishing his studies there, he became renowned as a mufti of in essence the Muslim world of the time. He became known as a mufti, and assuming the position of being a mufti in them times was not as is not a cheap title, as you would say probably has become a little bit nowadays, that anyone and everyone is called a mufti who's done a mufti class, who's done a mufti iftar course, is then labeled a mufti, which in them times wasn't the case. There would be one mufti who would be taking the position of a jurist consult, in essence, that any juristic uh, uh, mas'ala or something that would come up, they would be consulted, and then their ruling would be, to the extent that even the qadi, the judge of the time, they would then consult in matters of fiqh, of jurisprudence. They would then consult this mufti, and whatever the mufti's guidance would have been, that's the shar'i ruling that the judge would even have passed. So he assumed a very high rank in amongst the people, and he even took on the position of being a professor at Azhar University, where he studied. So you can understand what kind of ranking he must have had in amongst his people, that at the very university that he studied in, that's the very university that gave him a place to even become a professor at their university, and teach at his university. So he then went on to have brilliant students, the likes of Sayyid Ahmed Al-Hamawi, famously known. He's got books written as well, his student. Then you've got Allama Ismail al-Nabulusi, who's the famous, who's the father of the famous jurist Sheikh Abdul Ghani al-Nabulusi. So you've got others as well amongst his students, the ones that studied under Imam Ashurumbulari. And despite him being very occupied with his role as a mufti of the state, and also being a professor at Azhar University, and obviously being a jurist, and having his normal daily occupations that he had anyway, he still didn't give up his passion and his hobby of writing. So he went on to author over 60 different works. And I've mentioned a few of his works already. There was a very large, voluminous work that he did, was Shurumbulaliya, famously known, obviously named after him. There were other books as well, mashallah, he had written, some of which unfortunately are not found today. But we know the names of his books because they have been referred to in other books that other scholars have referred to. So Alhamdulillah, he's written a lot of books, and unfortunately he passed away on Friday after Asr Salat on the 21st of Ramadan. You can imagine what kind of piety and the level of piety this scholar must have been on, that he passed away on Friday, on the day of Jumu'ah, after Asr Salat as well, in between Asr and Maghrib. Such a holy time, especially during the Friday, during the Jumu'ah day. And it was the 21st of Ramadan as well, an odd night in the month of Ramadan. Such a beautiful death he had. So he passed away in 1069. So you want to note that out of all the biography, the main thing you have to remember is 1069. So 1069 is something you want to remember by heart. That's the time he passed away. So that whenever you remember the date of death of some scholar, you can somewhat put a timeline onto him, so you can work out what kind of period he was alive and during, and you can then somewhat come up with some sort of peers and people that would have been alive at that time. So this is important, especially when studying fiqh, so you can understand the background that certain masail, certain rulings would have been mentioned in accordance to. So obviously, if something is going on in their time, and they're going to mention something in accordance to, let's just say for instance, there is no car mode of transport of being a car, there's no car in their time, so they're going to be mentioning certain rulings in accordance to their mode of transport. Now if you know the years roughly that they were alive and in, then you can see that, oh, they were alive in this particular area of the world at this particular time in the world. They were alive in terms of time wise, timeline wise. So you can then put the ruling that they have mentioned in context to why they have mentioned a certain ruling. So this makes it easier for us to understand certain things. So this is like when you're going into deeper level of fiqh. So this is good to remember this, inshallah. So this is just a little bit about Imam Ash-Shurunbulali himself. And just a little point I forgot to mention, that he was such a profound scholar that he was known to be Faqihun Nafs. This title being given to a jurist is amazing. Faqihun Nafs is like one of the highest titles that could be given to somebody by a fellow jurist, that this person knows fiqh, they understand fiqh, so they have fiqh within their nafs, within their own body. So that when they, within themselves, in their mindset has become a fiqhi mindset. So this is Imam Shurunbulali. And the text that we're studying is his Maraqi Sa'adat, the ascent to felicity. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam wa rasulillah. So now we move on to the actual book. We're starting from the chapters of Tahara, purity, cleanliness. To understand why we're starting from these chapters, in the books of fiqh, we generally talk about the chapters of purity first, and this is because, or one main reason as to because purity is obviously the gateway to our worship. As we know from the famous hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned by Imam Bukhari as well as Imam Muslim, rahimahumullah, that Islam is built upon five, meaning there are five pillars, right? One is the testifying that there is no deity except Allah, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger of Allah. That's number one. Number two is establishing the ritual prayer, meaning salah. So to establish the prayer, you need to have purity before it. The third pillar is almsgiving, zakat, charity as such. Number four is making the pilgrimage to the house, meaning doing the Hajj. And lastly, we have mentioned in the hadith the fasting in Ramadan. So because prayer is the one that we're going to be mainly talking about, in order to pray properly, you need to have purification. So we're starting from page 41 for those who want to follow along in the book. Purification, tahara. So purification, obviously talking about ritual purification, which namely is wudu or ghusl, the ritual bath, which we will talk about later. So purification is valid with the following types of water. So if you can understand in terms of categories, we've got this first type of water, which is rainwater, well water, spring water, river water, sea water. Even if it's salty water, it doesn't have to be fresh water, fresh sea water. It could be salty, salty sea as well. Anyway, and water from melted snow or hail. It could be any of these waters. in essence, this is just a list of, not an exhaustive list, a list of a few examples mentioned by Imam Shurumbulali to suggest to us which types of water a person can use. You can understand these are all waters that are natural waters, natural water which is available. So this is what he's talking about. In essence, he's talking about unconditional water, which we call ma al mutlaq in Arabic. So ma al mutlaq, the unconditional water, water which doesn't have anything added into it, in essence. Okay. So unconditional water, when we say unconditional water, we mean water which is, you could say, pure water which doesn't have anything else. So just to give you an example to understand what we're talking about, so if you have, for example, one of the examples we have here is rainwater or well water or spring water. So these waters without the word rain will still be, if you have rainwater collected in a utensil, then you will still be able to call that water, and this will be an accurate description of that water. It'll be water, or well water when you draw out the water from the well, or spring water or river water. When you've got that water, you can still call it water, and it will be an accurate description of that water. So this is what you call unconditional, because these conditions that are attached to it, rain water, this rain is a condition, or well water, well is a condition, spring water, spring is a condition, river water, river is a condition, meaning it's describing that water. That is not needed. The water on its own is still water, but conditioned water would be where you have, for example, rose water, or any other type of water like this. So if you have rose water, in a container right now, that rose water without the word rose would not accurately describe, if you just said water, it would not accurately describe what you've got there if you just said water on its own. So that is conditioned water, meaning you need that description of rose to be added along water to describe what you've got here properly. So any other water like this, soap water, so this is soap water, you've added soap into that water, is soapy water now. So you need the soap, you need the word soap to attach to the word water for you to be explaining what you've got here accurately. But unconditional water is any water which without that word, it will still, a water on its own will still accurately describe what you've got there. So this is what we mean in the first category here of this list that he has. In essence, it is unconditional water. So such water may be used for purification as long as it remains purifying. So it can purify, namely, to remain with its natural characteristics. Natural characteristics, its ability, its fluidity, it's not become, its viscosity is still, is water, viscosity of water, it's not become thicker, it's not become less runny. That's what he's talking about when he says its natural characteristics, with nothing having mixed with it, such as to condition it. Now we talked about the word condition it, and thereby remove its purifying quality. So the rose water, because it's now become rose water, because you put so much rose in there, it's become thicker, is no longer the natural characteristics of water anymore, so you will not be allowed to use that water to purify oneself, meaning to purify oneself in a ritual purity way, to attain wudu or ghusl through these waters. So this ruling applies whether the water is flowing or in a large cistern. So it's got a larger area, namely one with a surface area. So this large cistern is what a water with a surface area of at least 10 by 10 cubits. So you got 10 length, 10 width in terms of cubits, and the depth would have to be such. So with a depth such that its floor is not exposed by scooping water out with both hands. So when you're scooping water, imagine you're scooping water from there to wash your face. So when you scoop the water, it should not unveil the bed. If it doesn't unveil the bed, the floor, then that water is deep enough. So the depth doesn't have to be too much, but the length and width have to be at least 10 by 10. I mean, you can have a depth of 10 by 10, the depth 10 and the width or the length being 10, as long as the other part of it, the remaining third dimension of it, is this dimension, which is that if you're scooping, then it doesn't expose that much amount. So the amount of water is what's considered here, which is important. So the surface area has to be 10 by 10 in essence. Okay, hopefully people understand that. We move on to the obligatory integrals, meaning the fara'id of ablution. So we're talking about ablution from now on. So the wudu, the word fard is what we call the obligatory integrals, the necessary integrals in essence of any action is called fard. The plural of which is called fara'id or furud. Of wudu are four. So there are four fara'id, four integrals of this ablution of wudu. Number one, washing the face, whose lengthwise demarcation is from the top of the forehead to the bottom of the chin. So from the top of the forehead, right from the tip where the hairline should be, if a person does no longer have a hairline, where the hairline should be, or if a person's hairline is rescinded, then it's from the hairline where it should be from normally, up to the bottom of the chin for someone without a thick beard. For one who has a thick beard, for instance, for my beard, it's a thick beard because you can't see through it. You can't see the skin through it. So because you can't see the skin beneath it, you can't see the chin beneath it, through it, this is what we would call a thick beard. So for a thick beard, what you have to do is to the bottom of the beard. So the bottom of the beard, right to the bottom of the beard over here, you have to wash. Obviously, that doesn't mean right to the bottom of the beard, the hanging hair. We're not talking about that. Okay, so the bottom of the beard that lies on the face, as opposed to the hair that hangs below the chin. So not the hair that hangs below the chin, not this part, but the part of the hair which is up to here, the end of my chin. So that's what he's talking about. So you have to wash this part of the beard too, along with the face. So you would wash that. And its demarcation in width is from one earlobe to the other earlobe, even for someone with a beard. So the one with a beard as well will have to wash this part, which is in between the sideburns, the side of the beard, and the earlobe. So that part of the skin also needs to be washed, which is sometimes neglected by some. So this needs to be taken care of. Now moving on to the second fard, the second integral, we have washing the two arms up to and including the elbows. So you would wash the right arm all the way. When we talk about arm, we're talking about the hand as well. So it's from the tip of the fingers all the way down to including the elbows. So you include the elbow. Okay, so you wash beyond the elbow to include it, to make sure that it is included. And you have to wash the whole the arm, including the hand. So the right one and the left one, both the arms need to be washed. Number three is wiping a quarter of the head. So you have to wipe onto a quarter of your actual hair. You have to remove the headgear, the hat if you have, or if you have an imama like me, you have to remove it. I'm not going to do it right now, but you can understand that you have to remove it. Imagine my hair was bare, so you have to remove that, and then you have to wipe the quarter of the head. So a quarter of the head is roughly one hand, the size of one hand. So if you were to place one hand onto your head, then that would be roughly a quarter, and that would suffice. So why is it a quarter? If you measure it yourself, you put the hand, the edge of the hand on the where the hairline would be. You measure it, put it down up to here, and then you measure it again. That's my second hand, and the third 3 times, and now the fourth time, and I get to the end of my head. So this is roughly a quarter. I know the sides have been missed, but the point is that roughly a quarter of the head is one hand. So that's what the scholars have mentioned. Placing one hand, wet hand, onto the head is wiping the head. You don't wash your head. All you have to do is wipe the head with a wet hand. So you just wet your hands and you wipe the head. A quarter of the head is integral, is the fard to do. Number 4 is washing the 2 feet. So you wash your feet, both feet, right and left, up to and including the ankles. So you wash the whole foot, including the ankles. Just above the ankles, washing would be sufficing. So these are the four integrals. Now we have the sunan. So amongst the emphasized sunnahs, we have the sunnah mu'akkad, we call it, of wudu, of ablution, are following. So we've got a few of them listed by Allama Shurun Bulali here. So we got the first one is the intention. So make an intention that I am performing wudu. This is sunnah. It's not necessary to do. So what we mean is that if a person did not have an intention to do wudu, for example, they walked out into the rain, they were wearing a t-shirt, and it rained down so hard that the limbs that are integral to wash the face, as well as the arms, and then to do just to pass wet hand over the head and to wash the feet. So if a person was wearing slippers, for example, and they were wearing t-shirt and everything else, they walked down, it rained down so hard that these limbs became wet. So that would mean that their wudu is done. Even without an intention, they got home and they realized, oh, my limbs are wet and my wudu is done. Yes, your wudu is done, but the intention was not made, so therefore the reward will not be gained. So intention is needed for reward gaining, for the gaining of reward for performing this wudu. So that's the sunnah, first sunnah mentioned here. Using the miswak, the tooth siwak. So if I don't have one on me right now, but I'm sure you know that the tooth stick, the miswak. So you use the miswak to brush along the teeth, starting from the right and moving along to the left, from the top side first, and then the bottom teeth. You go in a some have mentioned in a circular motion, or some have mentioned a crosswise, and some are also of the opinion that you go up and down. So you can do all different directions, is no problem. Making sure that the teeth are cleaned, you can do along the gums and on the tongue and on the roof of the mouth as well. This is all part of cleaning the mouth. Now they're here using the toothstick. This is a separate sunnah. It is also sunnah to cleanse the mouth. So if a person does not have a miswak, does not have a siwak with them, they can still clean the mouth with their finger, for example, or with anything else, with a toothbrush or anything like this. This would also be a separate sunnah of cleaning the mouth. So this is also another sunnah. Number 3 is mentioning the name of Allah, tasmiyah, saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So saying this or reading any other dua, Bismillahi ala millati Rasulillah, or any other dua that's mentioned, if a person's learnt it, they can recite this dua at the beginning of wudu. That's also sunnah, number 3. Number 4 is washing the hands up to and including the wrists in the beginning of wudu. So at the beginning of wudu, you would wash your hands, because obviously your hands are going to be used to clean other parts. You're going to gargle using obviously water in your hand, and clean the nose, wash the face. Hence, it is obviously sunnah to clean the hands first to make sure that they are clean. Moving on, number 5 is maintaining the correct order of limbs, as Allah Most High has listed in the book. So how Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Quran, where in Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 6, Allah Ta'ala, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idha qumtum ila as-salati faghsilu wujuhakum wa aydiyakum ila al-marafiq. So people who believe, when you stand for prayer, meaning when you are going to stand for prayer, then beforehand you must have washed your faces. So washing the face first, before wa aydiyakum ila al-marafiqi, before washing the arms up to including the elbows. That's number 2. And number 3 is wamsahu bi ru'usikum, and do masah, meaning pass a wet hand over the head. Wa arjulakum ila al-ka'bayn, and then washing the feet up to the ankles. So this order, maintaining this particular order, which is mentioned by Allah Ta'ala in the Quran, this is something that a person should do, and this is also sunnah. Number 6 is continuity. So washing those limbs which are washed 3 times, 3 complete times. So here he has merged 2, I would say, continuity, meaning continually washing the limbs in such a way that when you washed for example, you washed your face, then you're going to wash your arms, then you're going to wash your hair, do masah of the head. By the time you wash your feet, that the face should not have dried. So doing wudu in such continuity. Unlike if a person was gargling and they started talking to somebody, then after a few minutes, then they finish their conversation, then they continue their wudu, cleanse their nose and wash their face, and they started talking to somebody else again. And then after a few minutes, they carried on going. As long as you don't break your wudu in between, you could do that. Your wudu would still be done. So you could wash your face, start talking to somebody for 5-10 minutes, then carry on washing your arms and doing the rest of the wudu. Wudu will still be done, but you've lost out this sunnah. So that's the continuity one. And the one, number 7, in fact, number 7 here is washing those limbs that are washed. Sorry, I didn't have number 7 here, but it is a number 7. So washing those limbs that are washed three complete times. So any limbs that are washed. So limbs that are washed meaning the face, the arms, and the feet, not the head is talking about, and not any other parts that are the masah of. So washing these washed limbs 3 times completely. So when you wash the whole arm completely. Then you wash the whole arm completely again, and then you wash the whole arm completely again. So 3 times washing it. When you wash your face, washing the whole face 3 times. Not like you wash this part of the face first, then wash this part of the face, then you wash the middle of the face. Not like that. You wash the whole face 3 complete times, and that's the sunnah here, number 7. Number 8 is rinsing the entire mouth 3 times. So you gargle and rinse the entire mouth, full mouth 3 times, and this is a sunnah here mentioned. Number 8. And number 9 is rinsing the soft part of the nose. So the nose, the part that you can bend, this is the soft part. When you go a little bit higher than that, it's the harder part of the nose, and that part you don't have to reach up until, you have to reach up until the soft part of the nose. So you take water in your palm, and then you put it up there, you put it there, and then you put it where the nose is, and you slightly can sniff, slightly, not too much that it goes in, but you can slightly, just ever so slightly, so the water raises a little bit high up to the soft part of the nose, and then you clean with your finger. And this is what we call cleaning the nose, rinsing the nose, soft part of the nose 3 times doing this. Number 10, running one's wet fingers through the beard. So you get the fingers that are wet, and then you run them through the beard like so. And then number 11, running one's wet fingers in between the fingers and toes. So in your fingers, you just wet hand, and you just run your wet hands through each other, the fingers through each other. And likewise, when you're washing your feet, whilst you're washing your feet, you would wash, or you'd say rinse, and run a finger in between each toe. So now, just to summarize our first session that we've had, we've discussed firstly regarding Imam Ash-Shurumbulali, who he was, and regarding his status, the book that he has written over here, and then the translation that has been done for us, and what we are going through. So that was just to understand the importance of this particular book and why we're going through this particular book for our sessions. Then we went through the understanding of why we're studying the purification, Tahara first. So in Tahara, the purification chapter, the first thing we need is the water that is going to cleanse us. So we talked about the different types of water that can be used here, namely, mainly the unconditional water that can be used for purifying us. So pure water and purifying water. That's the kind of water we're looking at over here. And then we started discussing regarding the ablution, and we went through the integrals, the 4 main integrals that are mentioned in the Quran, in Surah Al-Ma'idah by Allah Ta'ala. We went through those 4 main integrals: washing the face, the entire face, from the tip of the forehead to the below the chin, from one earlobe to the other earlobe. That's number 1. Number 2, washing both arms up to and including the elbows. And number 3 was washing 1/4 or wiping over 1/4 of the head. And lastly, number 4 is washing both feet up to and including the ankles. Then we started the sunnahs, the those things that are the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to increase in our reward, and we went through a few of them, and we will continue, inshallah, we'll continue the rest of them in the next week's module. So in the next week's module, inshallah, we'll cover the rest of the sunnahs. And at the moment, it's all easy, pretty simple stuff. And inshallah, hopefully, will start to become a bit more challenging.